Okay, hello everyone and happy Sabbath. Thank you for your invitation. I'm really glad to be with you, and I would like to start with a word of prayer. Dear God, thank you that we have the opportunity to meet and study together. I ask you for your special blessings today. Please give us wisdom and understanding. In Jesus' name, I thank you for all what you are doing for us. In Jesus' name, amen. So today is my final presentation of these local Sunday law studies that we began beginning of this year. And I would like to take this opportunity to give a summary of my study and to share my final thoughts. So we will do two presentations together, and then the third part will be the Q&A. Now, it seems that I'm the only person of us 5 speakers left that continues to have a different opinion regarding the timing of the waymark. It seems that the vast majority of the movement has established 2024 as the Sunday law waymark, and people are now waiting for close of probation, and in that context also for an attack of east wind to come. So I want to make clear that it was never my intention to go against the majority, nor did I ever intend to lift myself up as a teacher, nor do I want to be stubborn or rebellious in any way. But I want to be honest to myself, and I still cannot see 2024 as being the Sunday law waymark, as I think there are problems with the methodological approach and with the application of 272 BC and of Quintus Fabius Maximus Gurgis. And I also heard from several people that they really believe and accept in July being the Sunday law, but they cannot really defend it, which I think is problematic. So the past months, since we started with those Sunday law presentations, had been very challenging for me. I felt that since last year already, people believed that my conclusions are simply wrong and that I go against the elders' position. The studies were interesting for some, but they did not carry any weight to the movement's position in any respect. I often wanted to break those studies up because I also doubted on myself. But when I had those moments, my good friends motivated me to continue because they saw light in it. So here I will present what I still believe is true, but at the same time, I continue to be open to change my view if it turns out that I'm wrong. It's not about myself. I have no desire to become some prominent teacher, and I just care about understanding the truth as we all do. So I want to tell briefly my story, not in order to lift myself up, but to show that my conclusions did not come all of a sudden. I'm on it since several years now. In 2019 and 2020, Elder Parminder made a call to pray for an increase of knowledge on Islam, which I took really serious, and I felt encouraged by Elder Tess to read political books and study history and external events. So I began my study with reading books on the Middle East, and I was astonished how the historians connected our waymarks of 1989 and 2001, and also the other waymarks. So after 2 years of studying in 2021, I came to the conclusion that the prophetic role of Islam can only be played by one specific movement, which came out of the ideology of Sunni Wahhabism, which was taken over by the Muslim Brotherhood and Sayyid Qutb, and then further developed by the Mujahideen in 1989 in Afghanistan, then Al-Qaeda in 2001, and finally ISIS since 2014. So this specific movement has waymarks that are exactly mirroring the waymarks of our movement. When we have the first and second woe as literal Ottoman Empire, then we have the third woe as spiritual Ottoman Empire. It's not a nation because those nations are all allies either of the King of the North or the King of the South, and also enemies with each other, and they have different ideologies. So the third woe is the East Wind, which is enemy of all. It's not a country that can be pinned to a pole, but it's an ideology. Like the West is an ideology as well. So we really have to look into the different ideologies of the Taliban, of Hamas, of Iran, of Al-Qaeda, of ISIS, and really understand the differences between their ideologies in order to know whom of them plays the role of the third woe. In the beginning of 2021, my conclusion was that the prophetic role is played exactly by the movement of ISIS and their ideology. Then, in August 2021, the US troops withdrew from Afghanistan and the Taliban returned. This re-energized ISIS, especially ISIS-K, after they had lost most of their territory in 2019, they were in a crisis, but that crisis was over in August 2021. So this event was already something that I saw as confirmation to my study. In the same month, not the Taliban, but ISIS-K attacked the US troops at the Kabul airport in Afghanistan. So it was a first attack on the army of Rome in the year of 2021 that did not come as a surprise to me. After I had developed my study further for another 2 years, there was October 7, 2023, the Hamas attack on Israel and the war in Gaza that is troubling the world since then. ISIS exploited that event to further strengthen and spreading their ideology and also to realize several attacks in Western societies. I showed in my last studies articles about that. So we see that Hamas is not the direct threat to the US, but ISIS is. So my arguments why the role of Islam in Bible prophecy can only be played by that certain group are laid out in my 5-part series that I presented then in March 2024. But of course, the study was not complete back then, and there were points that needed to be clarified, refined, and further developed. I fully admit that. The response of most of the people was that my study was not valid because I suggested that we will see East Wind at the Sunday Law. 1 week after my presentations, we were reminded of the quote of Ellen White of 9T11, where she speaks clearly about close of probation and not about the Sunday Law, with which I fully agree. I also understood that we needed line upon line in order to be sure if some thesis is correct or not. So I continued to search for lines that either show East Wind at close of probation or at the Sunday Law in order to understand which conclusion is correct. Also in March 2024, ISIS-K attacked the King of the South in a big orchestrated attack at a concert hall near Moscow. This was a manifestation that they are back on the world stage, that they have the money, the power, and the network to realize devastating attacks on international ground, even within the country of the enemy itself. So as one of the conclusions of my study, I was certain beforehand that the King of the South will be attacked, and it got fulfilled because they are enemy of the King of the North and of the King of the South at the same time. It is that certain group that is presenting, in my understanding, the wild us who is against everyone and everyone is against them. In 2024, the spokesperson of ISIS made a declaration of war against the US and the whole world. He called for global jihad. It is that certain group that is calling for global jihad. Then in December 2024, we saw another important event, the fall of Assad in Syria, which also was no surprise to me and came exactly at the right time. It showed that Russia was not able anymore to defend one of their most important allies. It showed that they are not able to fight at two fronts at the same time, Ukraine and Syria. In 2014 was the invasion of Crimea and the beginning of the war against Ukraine. Shortly after, Putin invaded Syria and wanted to show the world that he is not a regional power only, but a global superpower. Now in 2024, with the fall of Assad, this was now over. The King of the South is on its way down and is no global superpower anymore that can fight wars on several fronts. We also have to consider that in Syria are still tens of thousands of ISIS fighters with their families in camps and prisons. Many of them came free after the fall of Assad, and many are still in those camps in the Kurdish regions where a new, even more dangerous generation is already raised up and ready to break loose. So also the fall of Assad in that time period was no surprise at all in that context. Without intending to do any prediction about the Sunday law, I came to the conclusion that the east wind must have to do something with shipwreck of the institution, which is the close of probation for the institution, which happens at the National Sunday Law Waymark. So what evidences do I have for seeing the east wind at the Sunday Law Waymark when Ellen White in 1911 clearly speaks about the close of probation? People over and over again reminded me of that quote, saying that east wind attacks only at close of probation, but definitely not at the Sunday law. And I want to ask, how are you so sure? Do you have line upon line and other stories beside that quote of 1911 to show that it's not at the Sunday law and to show that it's definitely at close of probation? I claim that my conclusion of east wind at the Sunday law is not made up on my own logic, but is based on line upon line methodology. So I will share my screen. So the first line to show east wind at the Sunday law was presented at the International Camp Meeting in October 2024. It was X28 in combination with X27. This line is showing symbols for judgment through Islam, both in 2001 and at the National Sunday Law Waymark, which is close of probation for the institution. I will not repeat that study for time. In connection to that, I talked about elections and certifications and the sin against democracy. Because when there is a scourge, there has to be a sin too. Michael Moore, the prophet of the Nethinims in 2001, was showing in Fahrenheit 9/11 in his documentary, The Sin and the Scourge. The sin being the voter suppression and corruption with the election of 2000. It was George Bush versus Al Gore. Without voter suppression and corruption by the Republicans, Democrat Al Gore would have been the legitimate president that the majority chose. Michael Moore and others were clearly stating that. At the certification of January 6, 2001, the not legitimately elected president, George Bush, had been certified. Michael Moore is clearly portraying this as the sin of the institution. The country was polarized. Bush did a bad job and had extremely low approval ratings. And then 9/11 happened. The country gathered under the flag, passed the bipartisan Patriot Act, and the approval ratings of Bush went up enormously. In a crisis, people wanted a strong authoritarian style of leadership. And 9/11, like the scourge for the sin against democracy that they committed in January 2001. So Acts 27 and 28 show us that January 6, 2021 also plays an important part in that prophetic story. Democracy was almost overturned, the ship was almost shipwrecked, but the anchors were dropped and democracy was strong enough to survive for another 4 years. According to historians and journalists, in 2024, a similar dynamic like 2000 was repeated. The Republicans worked very hard to make sure that this election will be won. They issued hundreds of voter suppression laws to hinder Democratic voters to vote, because they know when every citizen is able to vote, they would lose the election. They clearly don't want everybody to vote. They would not need any restrictive voter law if they knew that their politics appealed to the majority of the people. And in my recent studies, I brought many references on those points. So I still believe that the election of 2024 had been won by Kamala Harris if every vote had been counted and if every citizen had the chance to vote. If no one had been purged from the voter registration lists, if there were no manipulation, no intimidation, no Russian interference, no bomb threats on polling stations, no issues with the vote counting computers. And this is not a conspiracy. I believe that the line of Acts 27 and 28 warned us about that beforehand. It was predicted in November 2024 by one of our members. So I'm fully aware that sexism is the test, just like in 1850, racism was the test. But nevertheless, the majority was against slavery back then. So people fail the test anyway because they are racist and sexist, but it does not mean that the majority would never vote against slavery or that they would never vote for a woman. We see in other countries that there are even far-right women in power. So the problem at this waymark is that the Democrats compromised for the sake of the Union, and with that, damaging democracy and certifying an autocrat into power. Now, before the election, Musk and Trump clearly said things like, "Don't worry about voting, we have all the votes we need." Trump said in October 27, so shortly before the election, "We got to get the congressmen elected and we got to get the senators elected because we can take the Senate pretty easily. And I think with our little secret, we are going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He, Mike Johnson, and I have a secret. We will tell you what it is when the race is over." Now, Elon Musk said he knows the computers and he does not trust the software because it can be so easily hacked by adding just one line. So after the election, Trump thanked Musk because he knows those vote counting computers so well and thanked him for winning Pennsylvania, as we see here on the picture. Now, when the public fight between Musk and Trump began last week, Musk posted that he helped Trump to win the election, and he exactly said what would be the result without his help. He said, "Without me, Trump would have lost the election, Democrats would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51 to 49 in the Senate." So he even knows the details. Now, there is an organization with the name Election Truth Alliance, and they care about free and fair elections and investigate the election results. They quoted Elon Musk, who said, "Without me, Trump would have lost." And then they say, "That sure is a specific statement you have got there. Our non-partisan, non-profit group has been crunching the 2024 election numbers for months. We have identified patterns consistent with vote manipulation in multiple states, including critical swing states in presidential, Senate, and House races." Then they say, these statements like this are in line with what we are seeing in the data. So they are data analysts who investigate the results. These kind of statements are in line with what we are seeing in the data. These kinds of statements, this one from Musk, Trump's remark about vote counting computers in Pennsylvania at his pre-inauguration rally, are an affirmation and an invitation. They affirm that we are on the right track and invite further scrutiny from those who may otherwise have been unwilling to consider the possibility. So there must be more than only the money that he gave for the campaign. And it's not a conspiracy. Serious investigative journalists and non-partisan, non-profit organizations investigate elections. They are testifying this. I already had shared in my recent studies several articles and references on this topic, but this gets now more and more public attention. I just would like to share with you an article from June 8, so a very recent one. And this is by the Economic Times, so it is even mainstream. They are saying, Kamala Harris won the US elections. Bombshell report claims voting machines were tampered with before 2024. And this is from the article, a few snippets. I read only the middle part here. Could Kamala Harris have actually won the election? The question is no longer whispered in political corners. It's being asked outright. So it's really a big question now that is in the public domain. And I think in the movement, we also should discuss this question really seriously. In May 2025, Judge Rachel Tangray ruled that allegations raised by Smart Elections, which is another organization who care about fair and free elections, those allegations were credible enough to move forward. The case, Smart Legislation v. Rockland County Board of Elections, is scheduled for hearing this fall. So the case will be on September 22nd. The upcoming court case could become a pivotal moment in election security history. The lawsuit claims that a private company quietly changed voting machines in over 40% of US counties, and no one knew until after the votes were counted. So the implications are serious. Could future elections be altered without oversight? Should the EAC change how it certifies and monitors voting labs? Is the public being kept in dark about the technology behind their vote? You can read more about that court case on the website of smartelections.us. And this is unfortunately a bit blurry, but here you see, for example, in one county, Kamala Harris received 0 votes, while Donald Trump received 552 votes, which is almost 100%. So 0 votes for Kamala Harris, literally. Now the senator candidates, Kirsten Gillibrand. She is a Democratic woman, and she received almost 80% of the votes at the same election. And her Republican colleague, which is a man, received 20% in that election, while Kamala Harris received 0 votes. And this is not the only district where she received 0 votes. And at this district, citizens stated under oath that they voted for her. So this alone just shows that something was definitely rigged. It is just not possible because citizens stated under oath that they did vote for Kamala Harris. And also we cannot use the argument of sexism here because the candidate for the Senate, who is a woman, received almost 80%, and the candidate for the Republican candidate, which is a man, received only 20%. So this needs an investigation. And it's only one little example of many serious anomalies that those organizations found. As I said, the lawsuit is on September 22nd. And here's also the press release to AP on that lawsuit. So before judging and thinking that this does not mean anything, please do your research on it. Kamala Harris should have called for an investigation and a recount in several swing states because there were serious concerns raised already back in November, shortly after the election, by different experts. But the Democrats decided not to do that, but accept the result, knowing that something was not right. On January 6, 2025, she certified Trump without anyone having any objection. That, in my understanding, is the bipartisan sin that the institution committed. And on January 20, the decrees against equality immediately were passed through executive orders. The nation is speaking like a dragon since then. Even though Trumpism and Maga are rising, Trump has some of the worst approval ratings a president in the first months in office ever had. The country is polarized. It's not that all are in unity in support of Trump. So what does Trump need to gather the people under the flag again? It's what every would-be autocrat needs. It's a national crisis. That's why I believe we are in the run-up to 9/11. As the article by Foreign Affairs from 2024 said, terrorism lights are blinking red again, and this is based on what the FBI director was saying. Also, historian Timothy Snyder said a few weeks ago that the present government invites a terrorist attack, so it is imminent. As another part of my Sunday law studies, I have shown the line of the third woe by tracing it through the repeating pattern of Boston, Concord, and Exeter. I will not go over it for time, but just very quickly, we see the pattern very clearly on all those dispensations, and it is connected to the fight between the King of the South and the King of the North. The attack in 2001 did not come out of the blue, but there was a Concord and there was an Exeter beforehand. The movement of the jihadists had an increase of knowledge, and they had a formalization of their message where it was predicted by themselves and by the US intelligence services what is going to happen. So 1996 was Exeter, the formalization for 2001. Then we have the dispensation from 2001 to 14. We have also Boston, Concord, Exeter, and the crucial event in 2014, where the global caliphate of the Islamic State is proclaimed. Historians say it's the most spectacular event since 2001. So it is bookending 2014 to 2001. And in 2014, they say the Ottoman Empire is reborn in the caliphate of the Islamic State. 2014 is the first Sunday law in our lines. that shows the importance of that event. It shows that no other group or country can be the Third Woe or the modern Ottoman Empire, but exactly that group fulfills that role. In 2014, ISIS was territorially on its climax. The next dispensation is 2014 to 2019. It is a global decline of ISIS because the King of the South and the King of the North fought against them in Syria and took back most parts of their conquered territories. But the ideology continues to be spread underground in prisons, camps, and in social media. It's an international movement that was definitely not defeated at that time. Also in that dispensation, we have Boston, Concord, and Exeter. In 2018, Trump announced the troop withdrawal from Syria, and he was warned that ISIS is not defeated and that the withdrawal will be a victory for them and for Russia, which was a prediction to Raffia. The withdrawal from Syria in 2019 was Raffia because it was the Pyrrhic victory for Putin. And it was also a victory for ISIS because, as in 1989, in their narrative, they were able to drive out the enemy, the superpower of the US, out of their country. Then we have the dispensation of 2019 to 2021. Where we saw the withdrawal of the US from Afghanistan, culminating in the return of the Taliban in August 15, 2021, and the attack of ISIS-K against the US in Kabul, against the army of Rome. Also, that event was clearly predicted at Exeter. Experts predicted that the withdrawal will mean a bloody attack, and it happened exactly that way. So when ISIS seemed to be defeated in 2019, they were not visible on the surface anymore. In 2021, they showed up again and showed their ability to attack the superpower of the USA. The next dispensation is 2021 to the Sunday Law. And when using line-upon-line methodology, I can only see 2024 to be an Exeter and 2025 to be the Sunday Law. I have shown it in the line of Acts 28 already, how it is the sin and the scourge, the sin against democracy, and the followed attack against the army of Rome. So the King of the North is the woman, but the USA is her army, and the army gets attacked. So 2021 is pointing to 2025 in several layers and on several lines. Then we have 2022 as the increase of knowledge. Here ISIS attacks the Russian embassy in Afghanistan and declares global jihad. In 2024, ISIS-K attacks Russia in Moscow and declares global jihad against the USA, Europe, Israel, and the whole world. So the Russian attack showed their new strength, that they have the power, the network, and the money to do that within the country of their enemy. Not only in their own countries, an attack on some embassies or troops, but to go into the country of a superpower and realize it there. That fact should not be underestimated. In 2024, the FBI director clearly warned that other attacks are imminent, and the articles that I had shown in my recent studies compared these warnings with the warnings before 9/11. So this is, in my opinion, a clear Exeter. The line of the east wind is prepared since 1989, then the official beginning in 2001, then the most important event of global jihadism in 2014, is heading to 2025, not 2024. We have a progressive story of MAGA and Trumpism rising. July 2024, November and December are very important steps in that development. July is a prophetic and crucial date. I don't deny that at all. But also January 6 and January 20 belong to that story. To be sure, when we can place the marker of the Sunday law, whether it is July, November, December, or January, we have to have prophetic evidence and methodology. If you believe in July, you should be able to really defend it prophetically, not only accept it, but defend it through prophetic methodology. What gives you prophetic evidence for July 2024? This should have been very clearly answered. And I think we also need different stories. We need a solid line upon line to defend it. Now, just in case, if the east wind is seen in 2025, how do you know which waymark it is confirming? When you say it's close of probation, then you need as well line upon line to show this. So I believe that we have to look at the concept of the harbinger again. Of course, we have Ellen White's quote of 1911 talking about close of probation. But where do we have the harbinger concept from? It's from the line of the Magi, isn't it? The Magi understood the star being a harbinger to a future event. So their methodology is line upon line. Therefore, I want to look at the line of the Magi. And here is my suggestion. It is based upon the line that Elder Tess laid out for us already in 2017. Since then, many years have been passed and more light has been poured out upon the movement. So I think we should be able to develop that line further and bring it to the present time. Otherwise, it's just for the archives and does not serve any purpose anymore. So I believe that this line, which she gave us back then, is giving us light on the harbinger today. But we have to be able to bring it on the line of the 144,000 as we understand it today. I have already presented that line in my past studies, so for time I will not go into all details again. And I would ask you to review the quotes I shared, because then it just has more weight if you read all the quotes to it. So 9/11 is a parable to the star that the Magi saw, which was a harbinger to the Messiah. The Magi understood that the star is not the prophesied star Jesus, but a harbinger to him. So in order to see to which waymark and which event the harbinger points us, we have to understand the line of the Magi first. If you say, as I said, that 9/11 is a harbinger for close of probation, then I would ask you to show me on the line of the Magi that this is the case, because the harbinger concept is from the Magi line. So the Magi had an increase of knowledge after the time of the end. Then the wise men had seen a mysterious light in the heavens upon that night when the glory of God flooded the hills of Bethlehem. So when they saw the mysterious light, this is the formalization of the message, and this was the angels, were the angels on the hills of Bethlehem when they said to the shepherds that Jesus was born. Now, Ellen White writes that as the light faded, a luminous star appeared and lingered in the sky. So the prophecy of Balaam had declared, there shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. Could this strange star have been sent as a harbinger of the promised one? The Magi had welcomed the light of heaven-sent truth. Now it was shed upon them in brighter rays. Then she's writing, while they had the star before them as an outward sign, they had also the inward evidence of the Holy Spirit. So the star was an outward sign to something else. And Elder Tess clearly said that the star was the outward sign, which is parallel to 9/11, which was our outward sign. At this waymark, the Magi took the three gifts with them, and started their journey, following the star. They have reached the land of Israel and are descending the Mount of Olives with Jerusalem in sight, when lo, the star that has guided them all the weary way rests above the temple, and after a session fades from their view. So this waymark is the increase of knowledge, which Elder Tess called sunset. Back in 2017, we did not have our structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter yet, and the waymarks had different names. So at this waymark, they descended the Mount of Olives and entered Jerusalem. When entering the city, the star disappeared from their view. In Jerusalem, the Magi got an increase of knowledge about the birthplace of Jesus, which was predicted in the scriptures. They learned that they will not find Jesus in Jerusalem, but in Bethlehem. Then at the next waymark, which was back then called Prediction Before Midnight, PBM, the Magi departed alone from Jerusalem. At this point, the Jews or the Levites closed their door. Ellen White is writing, while God was opening the door to the Gentiles, the Jewish leaders were closing the door to themselves. And as soon as they have left Jerusalem, the star reappeared. The wise men departed alone from Jerusalem. The shadows of night were falling as they left the gates, but to their great joy, they again saw the star and were directed to Bethlehem. So the star reappeared at this waymark and directed them to Bethlehem at the prediction of midnight. So it was a prediction or an Exeter to the next waymark. At the next waymark, midnight, they arrived at Bethlehem. And there, the star stood over where the young child was, as Matthew 2, verse 9 says. So the star is standing over the house where Jesus is. That means the star is telling them in which house they find Jesus. Here's the point. When they enter and see Jesus in the manger. This is when they see Jesus, the real star, the promised one. So Jesus is the fulfillment of the event. The harbinger is exactly pointing to that event. But the harbinger is over the house. So the star is seen at this waymark when they began the journey. It was not visible at the next waymark. It reappeared at the PBM waymark. And then it again was seen at the midnight waymark when it stood over the house where Jesus was. And Jesus was the fulfilling. He was the real star. Matthew writes, and when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. They fall down and worship, and they give the three gifts that they took with them when they started their journey, and when they saw the star for the first time, which was at 9/11. So Ellen White writes, beneath the lowly guise of Jesus, they recognized the presence of divinity. That means that after they have seen Jesus in the manger, the Magi get an increase of knowledge about the nature of Jesus. So this was the line how Elder Tess laid it out, and you can see her original board work here. Now this line is paralleling the line of the 144,000 because the wise men are the watchmen. They are the 5 virgins. They have the oil. They have the 3 gifts. That means they represent the movement. And as we don't use the terms sunset and PBM anymore, I think we should place those waymarks on our working structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter. Now, midnight is midway, and midway is always the Sunday law waymark, the middle waymark of our lines. On the line of the ship, midnight is 2019, but we are talking here about the line of the 144,000. On that line, midnight must be midway, which is the Sunday law waymark. So Tess presented this line in 2017. Back then, the movement did not yet make the distinction between the line of the institution and of the 144,000. So our waymarks were not fully understood back then. But the line is clearly about the Magi, who represent the watchmen or the wise virgins. And therefore, it's not the line of the institution, but the line of the 144,000. Therefore, midnight cannot be 2019, but must be the National Sunday Law waymark. The prediction before midnight is Exeter. It's a prediction before midnight, which means it's a prediction to the Sunday Law. So it must be 2021. Sunset is Concord. It's the increase of knowledge, which is 2019. Now, the story does not end at the Sunday Law waymark at midway or midnight. In Bethlehem, when they see the real star, they understand the nature of Jesus. They understand humanity and divinity combined, but it's progressive. It's a process, an increase of knowledge, which happens in the Sunday Law period under the latter rain. After having worshipped the Messiah and given the three gifts, their journey was accomplished. They wanted to return to Jerusalem in order to go back to King Herod. But in a dream, they received a divine message to hold no further communication with him. Avoiding Jerusalem, they set out for their own country by another route. So the dream is the loud cry, which is a message of God. It's a prediction about Herod's evil plan. It predicts close of probation and the time of trouble. They understand that the Messiah has an enemy. Maybe we can say that they fully understand the great controversy at that point. Now, in like manner, Joseph received warning to flee into Egypt with Mary and the child. And the angel said, "Be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him." Joseph obeyed without delay, setting out on the journey by night for greater security. So that means that not only the wise men, but also Joseph and Mary received this warning message. They were warned about the evil plan of Herod and were informed that they should bring themselves in security. So in the dream, God told them where they should go. Exeter is a message, a warning, a prediction, and the dream fulfills exactly that criteria. Then at close of probation, the Magi return to their country in the east, and Jesus, Mary, and Joseph flee to Egypt. Because of the three gifts, they were able to afford the journey to Egypt. Now, Herod got mad because the Magi did not return to Jerusalem to tell him the birthplace of Jesus. He executed his evil plan. And White writes in Desire of Ages, soldiers were at once sent to Bethlehem with orders to put to death all the children of 2 years and under. The quiet homes of the city of David witnessed those scenes of horror that 600 years before had been opened to the prophet. In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and would not be comforted because they are not. So this is the death decree and the time of trouble. This act of cruelty was one of the last that darkened the reign of Herod. Soon after the slaughter of the innocents, he was himself compelled to yield to that doom which none can turn aside. He died a fearful death. That means this time period is also the death of King Herod. Matthew 2 verse 19 says, "But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother to go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life." This is another Exeter or formalization, because it's another dream where they receive a message by an angel of God. Instead of going to Bethlehem, Joseph was directed to go to Nazareth. He was also informed about Herod's death. Again, Joseph was directed to a place of safety. He returned to Nazareth, his former home, and here for nearly 30 years Jesus dwelt, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. So now this is the last waymark, when they leave Egypt and finally return home to Nazareth. And Nazareth means the guarded one. So this can only be heaven when we get home to our place of safety, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets. It's the final waymark, and the line is complete here. So what do we learn from that line? A line is in vain if it would not give a lesson to God's people. I believe that what we should learn is that we must recognize the star, the harbinger, in order to have the experience with our Savior in the Sunday law period. And the star is seen 3 times, in 2001, in 2021, and at the Sunday law waymark. This dispensation, when we understand the nature of Christ, when humanity and divinity is combined, when we are the living testimony. The Magi did not come empty-handed to that special event at the Sunday law. We should make sure that we have the oil and the 3 gifts already prepared. It's a sincere and uncorrupted faith and a pure character, which means a full understanding and living of the equality message. So the star is pointing to the Sunday law waymark on this line, to Jesus, the morning star. At this point, we should fall down and worship the Messiah and offer our 3 gifts to him. Now, what means Bethlehem for us, and what is our harbinger to Bethlehem? 9/11 is the harbinger pointing to Bethlehem. As we have seen, Bethlehem is midway, which is on the line of the 144,000, the national Sunday law waymark. The star itself is not the event. The event is to have an experience with Jesus, to see his nature, to fall down and worship him, to give the 3 gifts, whatever that means. At 9/11, we have seen the east wind hitting the ship. The east wind is Al-Qaeda, and then it turned over to ISIS. It is not a nation or country, but a terrorist movement. So it's not the event of 9/11 that is repeated and seen at the following waymarks, but it is the east wind. The east wind did not abate according to Acts 27. And I refer here to my other studies that I shared already, where I'm laying out the story of the east wind and putting it on the structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter. So I believe that the east wind arriving at 9/11 is paralleling the star. It's the outward sign that is directing us to the Sunday law waymark. 9/11 was confirming our line upon line methodology. It was a hidden truth that had been found. An angel came down to confirm our message, which was the message about the Sunday law. It was a harbinger to the Sunday law. The star is seen at 9/11, at 2021, and at the Sunday law. That means in the year of the Sunday law, the star must be seen in order to show us the place where we must go. Like the Magi got shown the place, the house where they should enter into. At the waymark of the Sunday law, the star is still a harbinger. It is standing over the house where Jesus is. So the event with east wind is the outward sign to confirm our waymark. And again, the star, which is the harbinger, is seen 3 times, 2001, 2021, and Sunday law. And once it stands over the house, we know that we arrived at the waymark of midway of the Sunday law waymark. We have an experience with Jesus, the real star, the promised one. Okay, I will stop here, and then we will do our next part. with the line of Jesus the priest, and at the end we will do a summary of my key points of my study. So let's pray. Dear God, I thank you that we could study together. I ask you for to help us to understand, to discern, to see where we are wrong, to see where we are right. Please help us as a movement to grow together, to find, to come in concord, to find answers to our questions. Please bless us further when we continue our studies today. I thank you for everything you are doing for us. In Jesus' name, amen.